So an engineer, a knight, and a roach walk into a bar. By Skimble_Skimble. Read by Clarity. Summary. They're staying the night at an inn in Cremo, and Lloyd is standing on top of a chair with all the grace of a headless chicken. The wooden spoon in his hands is visibly trembling, and he keeps readjusting his grip to account for the nervous sweat on his hands loosening his hold. Because there is a cockroach. In which a knight and a noble encounter a roach. That's the fic. Lloyd is braver than he used to be, Javier will admit. He still isn't sure whether it was because of a genuine care for people around him or if he's just that obsessed with protecting his money, but the noble always seems to find his way into danger eventually. Maybe it's a lack of self-preservation, maybe it's something else, and I can't even begin to guess. In fact, that tenacity of his is starting to feel admirable. Javier can't fight the slight awe he feels when he sees that determined expression slip onto Lloyd's face when he's dead set on a plan. It's confident, it's grounded, it's reassuring, and frankly, more favorable than his other expressions. His eyes shine bright and solid and warm like sun-bathed earth, and his lips always curl into that familiar sly grin. It means that whatever Lloyd says will happen, and so far that's been proven true time and time again. Javier looks at the man in front of him and genuinely questions whether they're the same person. They're staying the night at an inn in Cremo, and Lloyd is standing on top of a chair with all the grace of a headless chicken. The wooden spoon in his hands is visibly trembling, and he keeps readjusting his grip to account for the nervous sweat on his hands loosening his hold. Because there's a cockroach. Javier, why is there a cockroach here? The larger-than-life, greatly accomplished, triple-circle mana-heart-having engineer manages to squeak out in a quivering, high-pitched voice. It must have found a way inside, my lord. Javier's gaze goes back and forth between his noble and his noble's apparent, mortal enemy. The cockroach's antennae flicker, but it doesn't move from its spot on the floor. Okay, I need to be outside now. Lloyd all but whines, sending a pleading gaze to the knight in an instant. Get rid of it for me! His eyes clearly scream. Javier raises an amused brow. I mean no offense, my lord. And he pauses, because he is not sure if he really means no offense. But you have defeated countless giant ants. The Giga Titan. Okay. Javier raises an amused brow. I mean no offense, my lord. And he pauses, because he's not sure if he really means no offense. But you've defeated countless giant ants. The Giga Titan. A swarm of carnivorous locusts. As the night goes on, the noble's expression morphs into a bit of a scowl. It seems he's anticipating the jab. Javier continues anyway. The army of elves, a fire-breathing dragon, and even Sir Bibiong of the lake. He gestures at the tiny little thing on the floor. And this is what defeats you? When Javier looks up at Lloyd's face again, the knight sees something new. It's not his usual devilish demeanor, nor is it his calculated determination shining through. His eyes are flighty, avoiding Javier's, and his lips are thinned as he bites his cheek. The tips of his ears and nose are tinged with a splash of pink, visible even in the late moonlight. It's embarrassment. He looks less like a mole cricket and more like a cute hamster, like this, Javier muses. Like Serpentong. He'll have to bring that up sometime later to make fun of him. Lloyd pouts, and Javier is reminded a second time of a squishy hamster. Listen, Javier, those things are a nightmare. Tiny and creeping and crawling everywhere. Are you sure you're not just describing yourself, sir? Javier is unable to stop the smirk forming at the edge of his lips. Lloyd visibly stutters. Ha, ha, ha. His laugh is stilted and unamused. Good one. Now please kill it. Before Javier can say another classically witty line, the cockroach begins to wiggle. It crawls a bit closer to the chair, and Lloyd is suddenly stock still. His eyes are locked onto the bug, but the bug pays him no mind. It is carefree. There are a few moments of silence in the room. Javier doesn't even have to sense that Lloyd is holding his breath. He can see the noble's chest frozen in place. His cheeks are a bit puffed and his lips are pressed tight. A hamster afraid of a roach. He'll have to tell Queen Alicia. She'd understand the knight. The cockroach unfurls the shell covering its wings, but it's still on the ground. It's like it's deciding whether or not it should... It's like it's not sure whether or not to take off. The knight can imagine it thinking. Should I soar today? No, please don't! Javier can imagine as Lloyd's response. It's evident on his face. His eyes are wider than saucers, and he's clearly trying not to blink. But I really want to. The bug blinks back, antennae wiggling. Its wings quiver, innocent and fluttering. You stay right there. Lloyd's stare is as pointed as a rapier. His brows are furrowed deeper than the holes he digs. Aww. The cockroach folds its shell over its wings again. Wow, it's really like the Lloyd and the roach were talking just now. It must be the mole cricket in him, Javier decides. Bug-to-bug communication. The knight tries to stifle his frown. He really wanted to see it fly. What expressions would his lord make? He's so curious. Maybe just a little bit? The roach opens its wings again, wiggling around. Javier leans a bit closer. Javier, you really don't have to look so happy about this, Lloyd hisses, the words escaping from the corner of his lips. Oops. Did he look too excited? The bug scutters some more and is now turned to face Javier. There's a splash of color on the little roach's head, and the knight realizes. He thinks, the plot forming in his head. This is the kind that reacts to mana. Javier imagines the bug humming as it crawls around once again. Little roach. The knight shifts his feet, and a ripple of mana begins to wash over the floor. A tiny wave to start the storm. I think today you will fly. Hooray! He imagines it cheering. Its body begins to shine, a bright golden thing lighting up the room. How beautiful. Lloyd doesn't seem to think so. Javier, what is it doing? Why is it glowing? Oh my god. You have a god? What? No, that's just a figure of... The cockroach takes off. Lloyd Fronteras screams, a very Savior Frontera estate-like scream. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit! The noble leaps off the chair and darts behind Javier, waving the spoon around with one hand as the roach flies around the room in all its golden, glowing glory. His other hand grips Javier's shoulder tight, shaking the knight around. The profanities continue. It's the most Javier has heard him swear in a couple of months, and oddly enough, it's a little satisfying. Do something! Lloyd demands, pleads, cries, shaking Javier harder. Well, as fun as it is to hear Lloyd screaming like an idiot, the noise does hurt Javier's ears. And this should end eventually. The knight sighs, loud and reluctant, and fishes the emergency butter knife from his coat pocket. The utensil flickers to light with Javier's aura, a bright and vibrant teal turning the little piece of silverware into a sharp-edged blade. Javier peeks at Lloyd one more time. The noble is still waving the spoon around wildly, trying to follow the flight path of the cockroach. He looks genuinely fearful, big and wide brown eyes shaking like loose falling soil. And when he's not wailing for his life, there's a deep frown on his face. Okay, maybe the knight feels a little bad about instigating this. But seeing his lord's face go from mostly apprehensive to absolutely mortified when the bug started flying was a little bit worth it. Thank you for your sacrifice, little roach. Javier aims his aura dagger, and he closes his eyes in brief solidarity. My what? The cockroach has no way of knowing its imminent end. Javier opens his eyes and locks onto the bug. It's flying faster, no doubt having noticed the accumulation of mana at the knight's hands. He takes a sharp inhale, and with a flick, thwack! The blade cuts into the cockroach in a swift punch, piercing into its head and soaring right into the wall. The splatter is small but immediate, a little splotch of green plastered onto the wallpaper. There's a crack crawling upwards where the knife pierces the wood. The gold glow that followed the bug dims, leaving behind a dark and quiet shell. The roach is dead. Lloyd and Javier both peer at the newfound crime scene. The knight frowns, a slight guilt rising. Hopefully it didn't hurt too much. The noble just grimaces and is first to turn away from the dead body. Couldn't you have gotten rid of it in a cleaner way? Lloyd asks, and then he adds in a mumble. We're gonna have to pay for that. Javier turns away from the bug to squint at him. You didn't say how I should kill it, sir. Exterminators should always be aware of what the client might want. I am not an exterminator. But you killed it, didn't you? Yes, so you exterminated it. I am a knight. I do not exterminate bugs. But what did you just do? Eliminated a threat to you, which means you exterminated it. Congratulations on your new pest control career. Can you please clean it up now? You didn't deny that it was threatening you, my great lord. Why did you say it like that? You didn't deny it. Again, I think I need to hire from a different pest control company. You are threatened by roaches? I will revoke lullaby services, Lloyd sings. Javier clicks his tongue and starts scraping the bug off the wall. By the time Javier returns from disposing of the roach's carcass, outside! Take it outside! Don't just trash it! His lord had demanded. Lloyd is sitting cross-legged on the bed. His gaze is sweeping the room carefully, and his hands are absently picking at his nails. The knight watches him for a moment before sitting down on the couch across the room, clutching his pink pillow. That focused look the noble is using to scan at the room is pawing at Javier's curiosity. It makes him want to prod, if only a little. I remember you used to be quite fond of bugs, sir. Ah, the noble blinks at him, taken out of his focus. Was I now? How times change. The choppy laugh is accompanied by that stiff, brazen look that always appears when he's poorly trying to cover his own ass. Javier decides to not comment on the expression and nods. His memory takes him to a different Lloyd, when they were just kids. A Lloyd who would watch beetles fight intently and cheer when the biggest became the victor. A Lloyd who would pick up different creatures and cackle as he held them to Javier's face. A Lloyd who would leave the molted exoskeletons of the millipedes in places where Javier would be as a surprise. Whether it was an attempt to play or if it was just to upset the would-be knight, he never got to find out. The engineer scratches at the back of his neck, and that face Javier had seen earlier that night makes its return. Softly bitten cheeks painted in a tulip pink, and sheepish eyes that settle everywhere except on the knight. It's curiously endearing. It's a face that Javier didn't think Lloyd could make. It's cute how this devilish, conniving, sharp-tongued man could appear so boyish and flustered. Like a hamster. Javier fights the urge to get up and poke the noble's cheek. Instead of letting that urge win, the knight chooses to fully give in to his curiosity. You are strong in the face of giant ants, the Gigatitan, locusts, elves? Okay, we are not doing that gag again. So what changed for you to just be afraid of regular roaches? Javier watches the engineer carefully. I thought you were fearless now, he thinks. Lloyd grumbles a bit as he scratches his head, which is followed by a reluctant sigh. When he looks up again, he meets Javier's eyes. It's like this, he starts. All those things we fought, they're big, quantifiable, visible things. Sure, they scare me, but I can see them and solve things from there. They're the away players coming to our home game, if that means anything to you. It doesn't, but Javier nods anyway. The eye contact breaks when Lloyd looks down at the floor around the knight, fingers fidgeting in circles. Bugs aren't like that. They're not solvable. You can prevent them, but only if you know they were there in the first place. It doesn't really stop them. They sneak in, Lloyd continues, and his hands are clasped now, and creep up on you and live in your home without you even knowing. They affect you and you don't even know it. Sometimes you can't even do anything about it. A weighted silence blankets the room. The noble's shoulders droop like a newly wilted flower, shrinking into itself. And a bunch of them got into my room once while I was asleep. Lloyd's voice is a quiet thing. I couldn't get rid of them for a week or so. He looks vulnerable. An open, timid honesty slipping out from peeled wallpaper. He's telling the truth, even if this is something Javier doesn't ever remember happening in their lifetime. Man, now Javier feels really bad about making that bug fly around. I'm sorry, sir. And the knight is truly, genuinely sorry. Lloyd looks back up at him, and the meek, quiet gaze from before immediately melts into a narrowed scowl. Why are you looking at me like that? Javier doesn't follow. Like, the noble squats at the air in front of Javier's face like there was a fly buzzing around. You look genuinely sorry for me. Stop that. I can't even say you're faking it either. I'd rather you just make fun of me or something. This is creeping me out. Okay, wait, don't look like you're actually considering making fun of me. The knight purses an expression in an attempt to hide his... The knight purses his lips in an attempt to hide his expression, despite it being a little too late for that. Lloyd just sighs in response, but there's no harshness in the exhale. It's light, and from his nose in a way that's clearly amused, and oh so close to fond. The engineer scratches the back of his neck. Don't feel bad. Yeah, I get scared, but I won't let it stop me or anything. Seriously. And at this, the sprouts of worry that had taken root in Javier's chest are swiftly pulled away. Whatever Lloyd says will happen, and the knight still believes that to be true. Besides, you can just keep doing your thing, and it'll all be A-okay. My thing? You know. And Lloyd smiles, confident, grounded, reassuring, as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. Being my knight? I can trust you to help me. The words echo in Javier's ears. My knight. I can trust you. The beat of silence gets an awkward laugh out of Lloyd. Don't tell me you can't protect me from regular bugs now. Of course I can. I always will. Javier answers, his pride sparking. Bugs, monsters, whatever it is they'll face. Of course he can protect Lloyd. Lloyd is his noble, and he is Lloyd's knight. Who else would it ever be? Lloyd doesn't do a very good job at hiding the small grin that flutters across his face before he starts waving his hand and scowling. That's enough of that. It's already late. We've got a long day tomorrow, so get to bed already. I am already sitting, sir. Technically, I am waiting for you to... When designing a roundabout, you have to consider 7 factors. The yield line, the truck apron, the central island, splitter islands, outer curb, and pedestrian crossings. Studies have shown that increasing the vehicle path curvature decreases the relative speed between entering and circulating vehicles, and thus results in decreases to entering, circulating, and exit circulating vehicle crash rates. If a vehicle is assumed to be 2 meters wide and maintains a minimum clearance of 0.5 meters from a roadway centerline or a concrete curb... Javier is out before the end of the second sentence. That night he dreams of slaying the endless swarm of bugs trying to enter Lloyd's room behind him. All in a bright orange and rather tacky safety vest. All right. Well, that was an engineer, a knight, and a roach walk into a bar. This is the first fic I've ever read. Well, for other people. I hope you like it. There were obviously a lot of mistakes in this, but this is genuinely my 15th time recording this, and I'd rather not try to record more than 15 times until I have a better mic and an editing system. Thank you so much for